This week on One Crazy Story, comedian Mike Bobbitt tells me about the time he had to follow Louis C.K.
I think Marin saw like how nervous I was, and he's in one ear. He's like, "Hey, don't worry, buddy. This is your crowd. This is what you came here for. This is going to be the best show you've ever done." And Mike Kaplan's in my other ear going, "These people are going to hate you.
What?
They're not going to know. They don't know who you are.
They don't care about
They're
you.
going to be so disappointed to go from Louis C.K. to this guy from Detroit they've never heard of before." I worked with Mark Maron in Madison, Wisconsin. When Mark was just taking off, like getting back into clubs and everything, the podcast was becoming a successful thing. And it was a week that I put together with the help of Eric Yoder, actually.
Oh,
cool. I know a lot of people give Eric crap, but, I told him I really want to work with Maron, and I think he would do great in Madison. And Eric did a lot of hustling to make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think that Mark knew that, because at the end of the week, Mark was like, "All right, buddy, what can I do for you?" And I was like, "I really want to do Comedy Bang Bang," when it was still a live show in L.A. And he's like, "That's it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like to this day, I wonder, what should I have asked for?
Like, what was he prepared to give?
Yeah. If you ever get a television series on IFC, can I play your assistant?
That'd be awesome.
I know. It would be.
Yeah.
So he's like, "All right, I'll call Scott Aukerman." And so a little while later, I got an email from Scott Aukerman that said, "Hey, next time you're in town, let me know and you can be on the show." So I actually booked my first time in LA to perform around doing Comedy Bang Bang.
That's awesome.
And I was like, maybe other things will happen too. I knew that Comedy Bang Bang was the most prestigious live show in Los Angeles. I was like, maybe that can get me a little bit of heat. And it did. I put together like a really solid week.
It's a good place to start too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's better than doing just some bar open mic.
Right, because nothing has been more disappointing about living in LA than starting at the top.
Or you could just do that in Michigan if you want. You might as well just stay in Michigan. Just do this bar. Just hang out at this bar. And tell some jokes.
this is the story of me peaking in Los Angeles.
Should have came home right after that show.
And should have just been like, "All right, guys, I made it.
I got a plane to catch."
So I go to the UCB Theater, and which was maybe it's only like about a mile from where I would stay when I would visit LA, and it's actually the same building where I live now.
Okay.
And I got there super, super early. Like Doug Loves Movies was always the show that was on before Comedy Bang Bang. So, there's a line for Doug Loves Movies, and I'm not going into that show. That's how early I am. I'm like an hour early.
So you're nervous too?
Yeah.
So you're just like, I'll get there at 5.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Time's the show?
Yep. How far away is it? A mile? Okay. Yeah,
I'll leave at 2 p.m. We'll be there.
I'm going to camp out in a tent, and I'm first in line for Doug. No, you can go ahead of me. I'm not going in.
No, don't worry. I'm not here for Doug.
Right. So, it was so funny. Like, I got there, and they were like, "Well, no one's here from Comedy Bang Bang yet. If you want to go in, everyone's there from Doug Loves Movies. Do you know those guys?" And I'm like, "No." And and I didn't want to sit in the green room with a bunch of like,
who's this Bobbitt guy?
Right, who's this weirdo?
He's been sitting in line forever.
I waited outside until I saw Scott Aukerman walk in, and then and I never met him face to face before, and I walked in behind him, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing the show," and he was super cordial, and we were talking, and I was a huge fan of the podcast, and big Mr. Show fan too, which Scott was. That's how he got his start, writing on Mr. Show. And we're talking, and he gets a phone call, and he goes, "Oh yeah, just come around to the back door, and it'll be open. There's probably a spot for you to park in the alley." Yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, someone else is coming in." And then he hangs up, and he goes, "Louis C.K.'s in town. He's going to do the Tonight Show, and he just wanted to do a bunch of sets, so he's going to go on before you." And I was just like, "Wow, I'm going to meet Louis C.K. in a second." And then it clicked, like, "Oh, I'm going to have to try to follow Louis C.K.
in L.A.
Yeah.
Well, actually, anywhere. I'm sure that's got to be the hardest set ever.
Yeah, arguably the best comedian working today, and I'm going to go on after him. And he showed up, and like the other people on the show were just kind of filing in, and it was Jerry Minor, Mike Kaplan, Maron stopped by, because Maron's Maron has a reputation of being kind of a grouch, but he can also be a really sweet guy too. And I think he knew that I was nervous, or maybe he just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to mess it up. But he stopped by to be at the show. Jonah Ray from the Nerdist Network was hosting the show, and I'm sitting on this little love seat, and then Louis comes in, sits down right next to me, and his notebook is on his knee, and he's kind of, talking with his hands, and his notebook keeps hitting my leg, and I'm like, there's gold in that notebook.
I wonder what jokes he's got in there.
Right, exactly. It's the set that he did was stuff I've never heard him do.
Yeah,
ever.
And it was probably pretty cool.
It was really funny. Yeah. So
you're the only Mike Bobbitt there,
right?
In that sense of like,
I'm the only person that no one knows. Like, besides me, Mike Kaplan was the next lowest rung on the totem pole, just because he did Last Comic Standing or whatever he was known for. Mike MYQ Kaplan.
Yeah. That's a great lineup.
Yeah, it's super solid.
And where were you at in the lineup? Obviously after Louis K. But...
It was Jonah hosting, Charlene Yee. She was on the show too, and she's kind of disappeared. Louis, then me, and then I think like Mike Kaplan, then Jerry Minor, and then Maron.
And you were doing like 5 minutes?
I was so nervous, I never even thought to ask how much time to do. And so Charlene was, the darling at the time where everyone loved her. And then Louis goes out, and, Jonah's like, oh, this is this is kind of a cool thing about doing UCB theater. You never know who's going to stop by. You may have seen this guy. He has his own TV show called Louis. Give it up for Louis C.K. And you could feel the energy in the crowd just make the room explode.
Right.
And, because that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and they weren't expecting to see Louis C.K.,
And I'm watching from the wings with Maron on one side and Mike Kaplan on the other side. and I'm getting so nervous because I realize I'm next.
Yeah.
And I think Maron saw like how nervous I was, and he's in one ear. He's like, hey, don't worry, buddy. This is your crowd. This is what you came here for. These people, they're your people. They're going to love you. This is going to be the best show you've ever done. This isn't doing Rockford, Illinois or anything. Like, this crowd gets it. They're comedy savvy. You're going to have the time of your life. And Mike Kaplan's in my other ear going, these people are going to hate you.
What?
They're not going to know. They don't know who you are.
They don't care about
They're
you.
going to be so disappointed to go from Louis C.K. to this guy from Detroit they've never heard of before. You are going to eat it like you've never eaten it before. This is going to be the worst experience of your life. And, so I go backstage and I have these two. It's like the angel and the devil on my shoulder. And who would ever imagine like Maron being the angel?
Yeah, right.
But so I go backstage and Jonah's like, all right, buddy, how do you want me to introduce you? And I was like, you can. Like, I had nothing. Yeah, I didn't have any credits. Like,
from Detroit.
Yeah, he middles at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase.
You guys know Ann Arbor?
Yeah. He's worked with Bruce the Moose Goodman.
He's worked with Mark Barrett,
right?
And Mark's there too. And
so I said he's worked with Mark Maron from Detroit, Mike Bobbitt. Yeah. So Jonah goes out, and I think he was just trying to pump me up and do me a favor or whatever. And what's nice is there's a LA photographer that happened to be there this night named Lizel, who was capturing all of this for like a big coffee table photo book. So there's pictures of this whole night here.
Oh, wow. I gotta find this book.
Yeah.
Did you find out? Are you in the book? Did you look?
Yeah, there's actually a picture of me in the book. Yeah.
You can see how shitty would
there's
it be
a picture
if they just left you out.
Because it was like the first time like Louis had just done Maron's podcast, and they used to be like best friends, and then they had the falling out. This was their first time seeing each other socially. So there's like a picture of Louis and Maron hugging each other, and me sitting on the couch next to Louis trying to be like, I'm not nerding out, and you can just kind of see it in my face, like I have a frozen face because I'm trying not to look giddy.
Was this before the show?
This was before the show. Yeah. So Jonah introduces me. He's like, all right, your next guy, he's from Detroit. He works with Maron all the time. And I'm like, oh, I know Maron well enough to know that he's not going to like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, give it up for Mike Bobbitt. And everyone's cheering. And I say to Jonah, and there's a picture of this moment. I was like, I don't work with Maron all the time. I did one weekend with him in Wisconsin. And Jonah's like, oh, it's okay. You know, he's not going to mind. And I'm like, are you kidding? Of course he'll mind.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of me kind of going, are you kidding? So I start to talk, and Mike Kaplan was right. Everyone was just sort of like, when they're like, oh, we don't know who this is. Like, I don't know what he thought was going to happen when, you know, he said from Detroit, works with Maron.
Yeah.
Like, oh, is it going to be Dave Coulier?
Yeah, no, all they heard was Mark Maron. They're like, Mark Maron's here too. Oh, who's this Bobbitt guy?
Right, did he win a contest? Yeah. I have never been this nervous on stage in my life. My mouth felt like I was eating a sponge that sopped up sand.
Oh no, that's the worst feeling ever.
I would say a sentence and then just take a drink of water and say something and take a drink of water. And then I looked at the clock and realized I had no idea how long I've been out there, how long I was supposed to do.
Oh no.
I didn't freeze. Like I went through
you
the
did
act.
Your set, you did, you know.
And I try to do because this past weekend was the first time I've been on stage to do an hour in like 6 months. You know, I definitely have some crutches that I do when I'm feeling nervous, and that's lash out against the audience. So at the UCB Theater, I don't know if you've ever seen shows there, like they have the audience sitting on the stage. Like they have a couple rows of chairs, and then they'll have people sitting crisscross.
It's like a really, really small room.
Yeah, it's a tiny, tiny room. So I started like yelling at the people on the stage, like, I don't think I like you guys sitting right there. You're getting a bad angle. And they're just sort of like, why are you insulting us?
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm like, this works for Jimmy Pardo. And so I did my set, and it was polite applause.
Yeah.
And
it went okay though, I'm sure. Was it? I mean, you got something out of it. It wasn't silence.
I would say my memory of it is it was a C+. Like it was a passing grade, but was nothing to hang on the refrigerator.
I feel like if they really didn't like you, you would know. I think it was just one of those things where it's like everybody knows, like, wow, this guy has to follow, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So everybody, even the audience, kind of gets it, where they're like,
right. And
this
guy,
this Bobbitt guy,
right?
And
this poor guy.
They probably only stuck you there because you were the new guy, you know.
Right?
Like, why would they put anyone else behind him?
Yep.
You know,
because no one wanted to go. You know, they're not going to have the new guy go first because you want the show to start strong,
right?
So, you know, put Charlene Yee, because she just had her movie that she did with Michael Cera at the time, and everyone loved Charlene Yee. And then you put Louis C.K. on. Yeah. And then
we'll put on Bobbitt.
Mike Kaplan doesn't want to follow Louis C.K.
Yeah.
I think Mike was Louis' opener on the road or something.
Yeah.
And so I go backstage, and Jonas said to me, he goes, hey, good job. Hey, you were right about Maron. He's like, he doesn't work with me all the time. And then I went backstage and told Maron, I was like, I didn't tell Jonah to say that I worked with it. He's like, I know, we straightened it out.
Okay. Oh, man.
And I was like, well, that's it. You know, that was my one shot, you know. Yeah. And before that, I worked with Alan Ball from Florida, who's a great, great comic. Like, I really like Alan Ball a lot. I think he's going back out on the road more. Like, he was doing cruise ships for a bit. And he was one of the first comedians that I saw him live at Lansing Connections on the weekend that I decided, you know what? Yeah. This is a thing that I think I'm going to do.
So I want the first guy you saw.
Because he made a reference to Glenn Danzig in his act. And I was like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If you can reference something, you know, kind of really niche like that, I was like, he's the reason I want to do this. And he told me that one of his biggest regrets was never going to LA. And he's like, I always wanted to wait until I was ready. And then I realized after having done this so long, I was never going to feel ready.
Right.
So
you're always going to find an excuse to, to not go.
So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to regret never going there. But at that moment, I was like, I don't think I was ready.
Yeah.
And then I went back a year later, and I was like, well, it's not going to hurt to at least reach out to Scott Aukerman and say, you know, hey, would you put me on the show again? And I did, and he put me on the show again.
Oh, that's awesome. So you got to do it again, and it was a year later, you said?
A year later.
It's not like they were, who's this Bobbitt guy? They clearly remembered you at least.
And I reached out to Mark and said, hey, I'm going to be back in L.A. Can I get you lunch or something to thank you for last year? And he was like, too busy for lunch, but you want to do a live WTF? So while the first year was a very humbling experience, the second year was great. And then from knowing Jonah for the first year, he does the Meltdown show, which is now that Comedy Bang Bang's gone, it's the biggest show in Los Angeles. And Jonah was like, hey, let's hang out. Hey, you want to do Meltdown?
That's cool.
So my second visit was a triumph, while my first one was a very humbling experience. And the second time at Comedy Bang Bang, Zach Galifianakis was on the show, but he closed the show as he should have.
All right. So you didn't have to follow anybody huge at the time.
Exactly.
Right, well, That's all for this week. If you enjoyed Mike, make sure you go to offthemic.com, that's Mike, and find out where he'll be performing at next. Or you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/NateComedy. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.